Welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to do a quick video, officer creation in Romance 9. Okay, less is more with officer creation in Romance 9. So name, gender, face, okay, year, the good bits, right? First of all, abilities. There's no cap in this game. I want to say in Romance 8 and 7. Some of the romances actually have caps when you go to make to assign your stats, which is kind of crazy. You should be able to set them to whatever you want. Now, for Romance 9 and older Koei games in general, right? One of the things you should know, the intelligence stat is just as relevant as leadership and war in the older titles. Okay, it's up there. It's a pillar. Whereas in the modern games, it's kind of fallen off. In this game specifically, you can make squads that are based on just really smart strategic guys, and you can roll just fine. Okay, traps, magic, all that stuff. I'll show the tactics in a minute, but intelligence, very important factor for intelligence-based damage and tactics. There's a lot of things also that intelligence protects you from. Usually other schemes, other ploys that can be used against you, right? So in this game, you can have a commander. Let's say, I don't know, Lubu, for example. You can have a Lubu type, and if his intelligence is low, doesn't matter how strong he is. You can completely shut him down with somebody who's got very, very high intelligence just by hitting him with ploys, non-stop confusion, disruption, etc. Right? So it's I can't stress it enough. Intelligence is very, very strong. You can run an officer that is just a warlord. You know, I want to say Zhou, but Zhou usually got good war. Worse than a Zhou, maybe like a Fa Zheng. You can run a guy who's basically got like 30 war, non-existent war, but has high intelligence and like a 60 leadership, like this guy that I drew up. And he can dominate other guys because of the INT, the importance of it. So, anyway, leadership in Romance 9. The main thing that it governs is your ability to take damage and sustain morale. So it's very important for those two things. It also is the stat that the enemy checks whenever they're attacking a castle or a gate, just like modern titles usually. I'm pretty sure modern titles use the same system. So your commander's leadership dictates how well you can defend. It's essentially defense, you know. There's also other things like rescuing a unit in this game. If you're gonna use the rescue command, there's one more command I'm missing that I can't quite think of that checks for leadership. But it's basically defense. It's almost always been defense in the series, and maintaining morale, which is important because maintaining your morale affects how quickly your tactics charge up. You know, even though we can't see the tactics window in Romance 9. There is a tactics windows, I should say, depending on how many people you have. Different tactics bars, and they're all charging up, and leadership affects that stat. That's one of the factors, because leadership helps your morale stay high. So indirectly affects it. War ability, we already know this. Damage, general damage, tactics damage, dueling. Very important for dueling. Duelings are insane in Romance 9. Probably my favorite dueling system is Romance 9's dueling system. Political. We already know this. Increasing trade, increasing farm. Economics. The most important thing for Romance 9 to consider with political is finding items. The reason being, in Romance 9, items are really strong. There's just almost every item is useful for something. Items can give you stuff from benefits to your stats, to extra XP gains, to the typical mounts that let you run away, retreat is assured, right? To formations, abilities you can gain from items. So this is back when, basically, this is the heyday of items. They could do anything. In the newer games, it's like, okay, stat buff and that's it. Not so in Romance 9. Stat buff, XP, new formation, Mastery of a formation. That's another thing. Not only can you learn a formation in this game, you can master a formation, which means your chances of triggering critical hits go up, and your chances of shutting down your opponent's attempts to hit you go up as well. So a lot of stuff that items can do. That's what I think of when I see political stat. I'm like, high political officers, yes, they can increase economy. Yes, they can find people. Yes, they have a higher chance of recruiting people. Great stuff. But what's the special thing in this game? In this game, finding items. Finding items is really important. It can be if you want to incorporate it. It's a sandbox, right? So those are the 4 stats. You can also set, your parent and an affinity. One person to have an affinity with. This is important for formations when you trigger tactics. If you're in a formation with somebody who has the same affinity as you, there's a higher chance that you'll link your tactics together, okay? Link your tactics, okay? The link system is... If you've only played Romance 8 Remake, let me tell you, the link system is old. Real old. So yeah, higher chance if you have a match with somebody, they're in your formation. Also, a higher chance that you'll step in and help them out in a duel, or they will step in and help you out in a duel. So if you're dueling and you lose and you're matching somebody, there's a high chance that the person that you match with, that you have an affinity with, they will step in and try to save the duel after you've fallen. They'll intercept the duel, basically. Now we get to the meat and the potatoes, the tactics, okay? The tactics screen. So there's 4 types of damaging tactics. This is the way I look at it. There's 4 damaging types tactics that are kind of straightforward, and then there's all the utility stuff. So if you look at the top half of the screen, you have foot, horse, bow, and bow. And each tactic has a second tier and a third tier. So think of it like 3 columns, right? When you make an officer, you only have so many points that you can assign. So here there is a restriction. You only get 35 points to spend, and you can see on the board here how many points everything costs, right? Now the strongest tactic is in the game, if you're just looking at pure damage. If you want to go by pure damage, it's horse first, then foot, then horse bow, and finally bow tactics. That's the damage scaling, if you just want to go by the type. So if you want to do the most damage, no matter what, that's what you're worried about, horse first. Then foot, horse bow, and bow. Now within that, there's utility. There's different bonuses and negatives to each type, right? Horse tactics, I just said, are the strongest. But they take longer to charge versus all the other ones. They take longer to charge. Bow tactics are the weakest tactics in the game, damage-wise. But bow tactics can hit buildings. You can target sentries if you're attacking a castle or fortification. And you can trigger critical shots, snipe abilities. With bow and horse bow, you can target facilities, castles, and you can trigger snipe abilities, which are one of my favorite things to do. Basically, you can shoot an officer with an arrow, the enemy commander usually, and injure them. So you have a chance of injuring enemy generals with bow and horse bow. With foot and horse, you can't do that. Obviously, your tactics are reliant on it being a field battle. And between these two, again, between foot and horse is stronger. As it scales, horse tactics remain stronger, but they take longer to charge. That's the trade-off. There's other stuff to them, but that's the main gist of them. And again, each one has a more powerful version as you go up. They scale from left to right. So, strike, once you get enough tactics experience, you can unlock assault. And then assault gives way to melee. Now, just because you don't have anything in any column with your created officer doesn't mean that you can't get it. In Romance 9, your officers will learn abilities just by participating in units. So, my officer here has foot tactics but no horse tactics. If I put him in a horse formation, if I put him with soldiers who have the horse formation tactic, he will get horse experience. And eventually, he'll learn sortie, and then with sortie, he can go to charge, onslaught. So, you're never locked out of learning anything in this game. If you want to teach your guy something, put him Put him with somebody who's using it so that he can watch and observe, and he will learn it. And another thing I should mention, if your intelligence is very high, you can learn other people's tactics, the enemy's tactics. You can learn the enemy's tactics when they trigger it against you. Okay, this happened to me in my one of my runs on this channel, Liu Biao run. I had them trigger a tactic against me. My high intelligence officer learned it, and when they tried it again, he shut it down. It was like in the span of 2 turns. It was awesome. Anyway, you can learn anything. My point is, you can learn anything. So don't worry about not only having 35 points. It's just a starting point. Everything's a starting point. So those are the big 4 for damage. Then we have Navy. The higher the Navy here, the better the boat, the better the stats. It also unlocks an ability, which it doesn't say here, but a ram ship, you can ram, arrow ship, you can shoot arrows. And the warship has access to both abilities, plus it's a warship. So, a really strong Navy officer can basically hold his own against 2 to 3 times his size if they don't have Navy experience. So, you know, Navy's situational, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. If you're around the ocean, around the water, then it matters. If you're not, whatever. Siege weapons. Pretty standard affair. Siege weapons in Romance 9 are stronger than the newer games. They move a lot faster. They have a little bit more resilience. They don't melt. They still melt, but they don't melt quite as fast. And in terms of like towers, for example, towers can do a lot of damage. Towers can do a lot of damage to troops. Rams, I'm pretty sure Rams have a tactic. I can't remember off the top of my head. Catapults are really strong because you can keep your distance while firing. So it means you don't have to risk arrow damage. And then Elephant, which I gave this officer just as example officer. Elephants in this game are crazy. So elephants are amazing at destroying, lowering HP. And they're very resilient to damage. So I kind of hate that they got rid of elephants in the modern games because they're so powerful to deploy an elephant unit. Anyway, Siege is pretty standard affair. You know, you have your tower for sentry damage, ram for durability, catapult does a little bit of both, and it has a little bit of distance, so you don't have to risk damage. And then elephant is just, it's a fucking bulldozer, is what it is. Literally a bulldozer. Then we have Protect, the Protect tree. Bargain reduces, this is utility. Protect to me is just utility stuff. So Bargain reduces the cost of building stuff in this game. You can build a lot of shit in this game. Golems is a special building, doesn't really matter. Dismantle is very strong. I talked about intelligence. Getting hit by traps in Romance 9 is crippling. Traps are AoE. They usually confuse. They deal damage. And they can chain. Okay? So you can you can have 2 armies both get hit by the same pit trap. They can be thrown into confusion, and the enemy can trigger an ability on top of that at the very end. So Dismantle is really strong. And its stronger version, Shield, is even better because it just prevents condition. So in this game, you can get hit by so many things. Confuse is just one of them. Your formation can be disrupted. You can be taunted. You can be misled. Misled is crippling. It makes your army march all the way back to base. It's insane. Shield is great. Just prevents your unit from being hit by any status ailments. You know, it's just total bubble. A bubble against status ailments. Literal shield. These two are incredible. Both of these. There's a reason why shield is so expensive. 14 for a utility is, it's pricey, but it's worth it. Okay, so that's the protect tree, which really should just be the utility tree. Then we have schemes. Confuse abuse, not as strong as in new games, new Koei games. Still very effective, but confusion doesn't last that long. And officers can shut it down. They can ignore it if their intelligence is high enough. It's an RNG. It's an RNG check. It's a dice roll. Your officer's intelligence versus the enemy, the unit that he's targeting's intelligence. If it works, confuse for a bit. If it doesn't, it just gets completely snuffed out. You know, you lost your tactic there. We have Trap. I just talked about Trap. Again, Trap is, in the right situation, backbreaking. Okay? Backbreaking. Cajole. I love Cajole. Convince enemy troops to switch over to your side. It's lifesteal. Okay, this is lifesteal. If you're playing any RPG ever, this is lifesteal. Situational lifesteal. There's some builds that are very strong in this game where you just have like 3 guys that are cajoling nonstop. And you're getting hit, but it doesn't matter because they're killing your soldiers and you're grabbing their soldiers again. So you're just siphoning off their soldiers, bringing them over until they just run out of steam. So cajole is really strong, really fun. Illusion magic. The 2 magics I'm not too familiar with. I know that they're devastating. Illusion confuses units after it deals damage. And magic deals damage and lowers morale. Both are insanely powerful. Both are fun to use. But I haven't used them in so long. All I can tell you is that they're super nukes. They're super nukes. Again, if the enemy is really smart, they can still shut down your magic. Illusion can be ignored. So those are the 2 magics. The last 3 things. Taunt. Lower an enemy morale. Very simple. The higher your INT, the more effective this is. Destroying enemy units by lowering morale is very much a thing in this game. You can taunt an enemy, lower the morale a little bit, hit them a little bit, and then win a duel. Suddenly the morale is completely collapsed and they're running away. You know? Rally. Raise your morale. Heal. Can be very strong. Totally INT dependent. Just how strong is your INT? The best thing about heal, the reason it's more expensive than cajole, is because heal is a guarantee. You're getting your wounded back. That's a guarantee. Cajole is a roll. My intelligence versus their intelligence. I might not be able to sway their officers, their soldiers, to come over to my side. Heal is a guarantee that you're going to get troops. So that's why it's a little bit more expensive. But again, totally worth it if you have the right officer for it. So you have calm and steadfast, and then you have the 2 extremes. So calm is more, will follow orders, may break away sometimes, but it's kind of rare, but mostly will follow orders. And then careful is definitely focused on making sure that he has an exit strategy. So really careful generals will usually run away very quickly. They'll start to run. Once they start to run, you can't take the order back. That's just their personality. Steadfast is more willing to stay in the fight longer. The problem, of course, is that's a double-edged sword. They may not always withdraw when you tell them to withdraw. You might give them the order to withdraw, and they might change their mind. Okay? So they'll stay in the fight longer, but sometimes they'll ignore orders. And then impulsive is basically Lu Bu Zhang Fei. These guys will keep charging. You'll keep telling them to fall back, and they'll just keep ignoring the order turn after turn. Higher chance to trigger traps, higher chance to get into trouble. You know how it is. So you have the 2 extremes, and then you have somewhere in the middle. Consider your personality carefully, I would say. And especially, you know, when you go to deploy as you're playing the game, it's sometimes you'll forget something and you'll be like, okay, we have 3,000, we should be fine. Your general will call it quits. And it's like, why is this guy calling it quits? Oh, because he's careful. You know, I almost want to call it cowardly, because I get so mad when this happens. But it is, technically it's careful. They just withdraw before the losses become too much. And then impulsive, the other extreme, you guys have probably seen that a million times playing all the Koei games. You know what impulsive is. So anyway, I drew up this officer just as an example, Savage Archive. So the idea is we basically have a barbarian dude. So 75 war is pretty good. 58 intelligence, 60 leadership. One thing about this game, growths are very fast in this game. Your officers raise their stats fairly quickly in this game. So you don't have to worry so much about your starting point in Romance 9. If you're going to use the officer a lot, he's going to get better quickly, okay? It's not like the newer games where growths have been just nerfed into the ground, where you can expect your officer to only go up like 2 points in a run. No. In Romance 9, your officer will go up like 10 points 15 points in a single run, 20 points sometimes. It just depends on how much you use them. How much do you want to use them? But the growth rates are there in this game. They exist, okay? So, 75 war is pretty good. And then for tactics, he's got some foot tactics. He's got the elephant. You know, I put all the big points on the elephant. I'm like, okay, I want basically a non-mon guy. So he's got the elephant formation for destroying when you need an absolute bulldozer. Boom, elephant. And then he's well versed in foot tactics. And then he's got taunt to taunt his opponents, lower the morale situationally. So maybe there's an opportunity to win a duel and then taunt them afterwards, cripple the morale. So again, Romance 9, less is more, man, because it's not so much about what you choose as how you can fill it out afterwards. You know, it's just a starting point. Between the items and the XP gains and the opportunities, dueling, taking a castle, learning a tactic from the enemy, where your officer ends up sometimes can be pretty drastically different from where he started in this game. So anyway, that's the officer creation guide. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I might do more for the other games as I get to them down the road, the other older PS2 games. So yeah, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys on the next one. Until then, take care, everybody.